Who you were before the diagnosis, who I was before my diagnosis, is not who we have to be after it. Hola! Welcome to Sana Sana podcast. I'm your host, Eileen Lopez Tomei. I'm a first-generation Cuban-American woman, breast cancer survivor, and mother of 5. I'm also a certified professional coach. Sana Sana is dedicated to you, Hispanic and Latina breast cancer survivors who've always been the strong ones and now feel lost in their identity after cancer diagnosis. Every week, I'll be sharing the foundation of my ecosystem of healing coaching process, which I use to help my clients restore trust in their bodies, release perfectionism, advocate for themselves, and live from a place of healing and peace rather than survival. Tune in to hear my real-life experiences, carving a new path for myself after remission, but helping my coaching clients carve a new path for themselves too. Hello, sister survivors. Welcome to episode 7 of Sana Sana. It's been 2 weeks since we last talked. I missed recording for you. The past 3 weeks were busy at my 9 to 5 and at home, and I have a lot to tell you, all of it good and impactful. When this episode airs, it will have been 3 weeks since my last 6-month appointment with my oncologist. At that appointment, I met actually with a different oncologist than mine, and that's because my oncologist is on extended leave. And I found out about the switch in doctors on a random day a couple of months ago before my 6-month appointment. And I'm not going to lie, I was devastated. If you're a survivor who has or had a great oncologist that took very good care of you, spent quality time with you at every appointment, took everything you said about symptoms and concerns seriously, and had a wonderful bedside manner, you get me when I say I was devastated. Yeah, shockingly, not all oncologists are good talkers or listeners, although I feel like if you're going to be a cancer doctor, emotional intelligence should be a required course and an exam you must pass. But I digress. So I went to my 6-month appointment on May 13th, and my new oncologist, who I was prepared to not like simply because he wasn't the one who walked me through treatment and almost 10 years of survivorship, was delightful. I loved him, but I'm bearing the headline. At the end of the appointment, he asked me if I was ready to graduate. Are you ready to stop coming to the cancer center every 6 months to see your oncologist? He asked me specifically. And I said yes. So he graduated me as a cancer patient. I will see him again in a year. And then after that, hopefully never again, or maybe in 2 years and then 3 years and so on until I'm just completely done with cancer. I was a little shocked. I couldn't believe that I was done being a cancer patient. And even though it was a big moment and a big day and I got great news, I just went about my life. I think I went back to the office or back online for work. I jumped back into my calendar and whatever meetings were scheduled the rest of the day. Then I went home and made dinner. Typical first-gen, eldest daughter Latina strong woman shit. And I didn't even talk about it in episode 6. I was still processing it all when I recorded that episode. And I'm still kind of unpacking it. So we're probably going to talk about this again in future episodes. But for now, I wanted to share this story with you first before I post about it. And it's taken me 3 weeks to share and now post something so consequential. All right, now that I've brought you up to speed on my own cancer survivorship plotline, let's get to today's episode, starting with a question. Who were you before the diagnosis? Not your job title, not your role in your family, not the good daughter, the strong one, the one who handled everything. Who were you? What did you want? What did you suppress? What did you perform? Maybe for so long that you forgot you were performing it. A cancer diagnosis doesn't just threaten your life. It can also threaten your identity. And for many survivors, especially Latina women, especially first-generation daughters, and especially the ones who were raised to be the good example, the identity crisis can be as disorienting as the diagnosis itself. Today, we're going to talk about the 3 identities that cancer unraveled for me simultaneously, about the band-aid of the safe identity and how cancer ripped it off for good, about what it cost to take up space and why I did it anyway, and about who I am still becoming, because this work is not finished. And before we dive in deeper, I'm going to propose a journal prompt for you, for those of you that are either jotting down notes or want to take some time to reflect after the episode. What does it feel like to ask yourself, who am I now? Not rhetorically, but actually. What comes up? Jot it down. And if you're a survivor who is sitting with that question right now, who am I now that everything has changed? That is exactly the work I do. Book a free discovery call at paperbell.me/Eileen Lopez Tomei. The link is always in the show notes. So there were 3 identities braided together for me before my cancer diagnosis, and cancer unraveled them simultaneously. So let's talk a minute about those 3 and who I presented myself as in 2016 and how my breast cancer diagnosis pulled the threads of those 3 identities apart seemingly all at once. So first there was what I like to call the good Cuban daughter. As the eldest first-gen daughter in a Cuban-American family, I performed perfection. I was expected to be the good example, not just to my siblings, but to my family's name. And I'm not saying that I was perfect or a good example all the time or even most of the time, but that was the pressure. It's subtle because you're not exactly asked to be perfect, but to act perfect. You grow up hearing, ¿Qué dirán? ¿Qué dirán la gente? ¿Qué van a decir? What will people say? What will people think? Even for the most normal things, you hear that. I love to tell the story about what I call a feral, sports-loving, free-spirited kid until I was almost 13, when my great aunt decided it was time for me to behave more ladylike and told my mom I should start acting more like a girl. Then came the training bra and the girly girl expectations. And I have a vivid memory of my tia Josefina, was her name, opening a slim white box and unfolding this very delicate tissue paper to reveal a pink lace training bra inside. And I also remember making a face at it and my mom saying something about how it was time for me to wear a bra, otherwise people would start to talk. And so Latinas are expected to suppress nonconformity, to conform to cultural, societal, and often faith community expectations, especially but not only if you're the eldest first-generation daughter. And I say this with no bitterness. Our mothers, my mother, my grandmother, my great aunts, they passed this onto us with love. The women who shaped me and you lived this reality too. It was the water that they and later we swam in. And yet, unbeknownst to most people, somewhere underneath all that performance was a woman with opinions, desires, edges, who learned very early to make herself smaller so everyone around her could be comfortable. And here's another one of those moments you can jot this journal prompt down. What is the earliest memory that you have of making yourself smaller to conform to a certain expectation, to keep the peace? How old were you? What did you want that you didn't say? So, first identity, the good Cuban daughter. Second identity was the professional identity, the chief of staff. This is the second identity I had when I was diagnosed. My chief of staff, the one who knew it all, and the one who people expected to handle it all, the one who people called when something needed smoothing over. And this identity gave me legitimacy, purpose, proof that I had made something of myself, that hard work and grit had gotten me somewhere. And what did this identity demand? Constant performance, no evidence of weakness, always being the most capable person in the room, or at least always appearing to be the most capable person in the room. And then lastly, there was the mother identity. I had 5 children, and the mother in me was the one who took care of everyone else before herself. Even if I wasn't actively caretaking for my children while I was at work or after school, although I had enough flexibility, especially after years of public service, that often I could be home in time for after-school activities. But either way, whether it was actually taking care of everyone else or carrying the mental load of what everyone else needed in order to be well taken care of, that was my mother identity. And there is a Latina mother script too, isn't there? We talked about this in episode 3, where you come home from a long day at work and tell myself I couldn't sit down until the house was picked up, until dinner was planned, and all of my chores were done. And how I felt like a failure if any of those things didn't get done on a given day, no matter what else I'd had to resolve that day. And the pressure that the culture and I had put on myself to not ask for help with any of it, either because I mistakenly thought that only I could handle it and handle it well, or because that was my role as wife and mother and professional, was to handle it all on my own. And then on August 22nd, 2016, when I was diagnosed, no more performing perfection, no more handling everything, because I couldn't handle everything. I couldn't even handle most things at work or at home. I had to pick one thing to handle from work. And that one thing that I worked on from home often zapped whatever remaining energy I had after chemo. So there was no more trying to handle and do it all. The performance abruptly stopped. Not from one day to the next, but from 1 month to the next, for certain. And not because I chose to stop it, not because I had a sudden burst of enlightenment, but because my body and the treatment that my body was receiving stopped it for me. And after the performance stopped, the question was, who am I when I'm not performing any of this? And so this leads me to, I think, the most personal section of this episode. There was this moment long before cancer when I pushed back against what was expected of me, and I got out of a terrible first marriage. I divorced my first husband, and I felt lost at first. Where did I fit with this new identity of divorcee? I was very active in the parish that I had grown up in. I was a Eucharistic minister, a lector, a Sunday school teacher. I'd gone to Catholic school my whole life, to that Catholic school. And now I was divorced and felt separate from my faith community, friends, and family. I also separated myself as well because I needed a minute to recover and reclaim my identity as a strong, educated, accomplished mother of 2, and also to figure out what was next for me and my 2 kids. So who was I if I wasn't conforming to what I thought were my parents' and my community's expectations of me? If you're listening to this podcast, you already know that cancer changes everything. Not just your body, but who you are, how you show up, and what you're supposed to do next. I'm Eileen Lopez Tomei, cancer survivorship coach and 10-year survivor. I work with Hispanic and Latina breast cancer survivors who are ready to stop white-knuckling through survivorship and start living from a place of peace. If that's you, let's talk. I have 3 one-on-one coaching spots open starting in the month of May. Book a free discovery call with me at paperbell.me/Eileen Lopez Tomei. The link is in the show notes. Eventually, after a few years, I met and married a wonderful man. We'll celebrate our 26th wedding anniversary in July. I had 3 more kids, started and grew my career as a public servant, and in some ways settled back into the patrón, or the pattern, that felt safe and familiar. The safe identity band-aid, if you will, went back on, especially with all that felt at stake again. Got remarried in the church after an annulment. Big step. 2 big steps. I found my way back to the practice of my faith after my divorce, thanks to my husband number 2. And even though I felt more secure in my identity as a divorced professional mother of 2 by the time I met my second husband, afterwards, I went back to feeling like I had to prove that I was worthy. The cost of some sort of continued nonconformity felt too high. And it felt good to put the Band-Aid of eldest, first-gen, high-performing, perfectionist Latina daughter back on in that moment. It was a relief. It was an identity that felt familiar, not only to me, but to those around me. And yeah, there was some grief. But that didn't come until later. The grief of kind of stepping away from those years between my first marriage and my second, where I really worked hard at expressing myself and not performing. And then, well, you know what came next. Cancer. And cancer didn't care about my identities, that I was a good Cuban daughter, that I was a professional, a chief of staff, that I was a mother of 5, didn't care about the Band-Aid. Cancer didn't care qué dirán la gente, or about the annulment or the return to church or the performance of the role. It ripped off what was left of the safe identity Band-Aid for good. But you know what was underneath when cancer ripped that safe calladita te ves más bonita Band-Aid off? It wasn't wreckage. It was a woman. It was me, with my own voice, my own desires, my own edges that I'd been trying to soften for others' sake for too long. And this woman had been there the whole time, waiting. And for me, I have to say, she kind of peaked out after my divorce, but not for very long. She went back to waiting. So I want you to take a minute here, if you're taking notes or you're going to journal later, and consider this question. Write this down so that you can journal on it later. Who is the woman underneath your safe identity or identities, under your Band-Aid? What did she want that the safe identity never allowed her to have? You don't have to name all the things that she wanted. Just one is enough. And what is one thing she wanted that she finally let herself reach for after cancer? Or maybe if your after cancer is very recent, what is one thing that you wanted that you're considering letting yourself reach for The women I work with often arrive at this question after diagnosis. Sometimes it's for the first time. Who was I before this? And who do I want to be now that I get to choose? That I know that I get to choose? That question alone can take an entire coaching relationship to answer, and it's worth every minute. I'm going to pause here for just a second, because if what we've been talking about is landing for you, I want you to know there's somewhere you can take it. If you're a cancer survivor who's always been the strong one, and you're quietly wondering who you are now that everything has changed, you don't have to figure that out alone. I'm Eileen Lopez-Tomei, cancer survivorship coach and fellow survivor, and my coaching practice exists for women like you. If today's episode is resonating and you're ready to go deeper, book a free discovery call at paperbell.me/Eileen Lopez-Tomei. The link is in the show notes. Okay, now let's talk about what happened after my personal, professional, and maternal identities came to a screeching halt and I stopped making myself small. Here is what taking up space looks like for me now, specifically, not abstractly. Taking up space professionally, personally, physically, without apologizing for it. Saying no without a lengthy explanation or guilt. And I was one of those women, and I still work on it, but I was one of those women who would say no, period, followed by 3 or 4 sentences of why I was saying no. Detailed, excruciatingly detailed explanations sometimes, because I didn't want you to be mad at me. And I felt bad for saying no. And I don't do that anymore. No is no. Also, I choose what is right for me and my family rather than what others expect of me, especially in the workplace. And honestly, like I said before, I still practice every single one of these. I'm still a work in progress. This is not a finished story for me. And what is the one place, I'm wondering, in your life right now where taking up space still feels hardest? Where does that old voice of ¿qué dirán? What will they say? Or of calladita te ves más bonita still show up? So for me, when I started taking up space, people who loved me felt it. My sisters, my husband, my job especially. And the pushback was real. The people who truly loved me, though, supported my growth and embraced it ultimately. They encouraged it. The work environment was a little different. This is the place where I felt the most resistance, was at work. My workplace, I worked with people that I loved, and my workplace was a complicated, imbalanced, unhealthy environment that I finally had the courage to leave after cancer. And my career exploded after that. My career and I also personally blossomed after that. My creative energy, my spark, I think really came back after I made that decision to move on to another role in a completely different part of my agency. And that's in no small part because cancer gave me the clarity to stop tolerating what was no longer acceptable. And not only what was no longer acceptable, but what was actively harming me. And that's not a small thing. So taking up space is not a betrayal of the women who raised me and you. It is the most loving thing that we can do for ourselves, for our daughters, for every woman in our lineage who never got the chance to take up space. And I'm not undoing what they built. I'm carrying forward and building further on their legacy. And I want to ask you to ask yourself right now, where are you making yourself smaller than you actually are? Not for humility, but for safety. For qué dirán. Just notice it. You don't have to change it today, but I invite you to notice it. So next, let's be a little forward-looking, and also I want to be honest with you. Like I said, I'm still practicing, still becoming, and I want to go into that a little bit with you now. This version of me is less afraid of her own opinion, less willing to perform strength that she doesn't feel. And that relates to the fake it till you make it a little bit. Feel like that's one whole episode in and of itself. But I'm less willing to perform the strength that I don't feel. More willing to ask for help is another way of saying it. I ask for what I need. I do it imperfectly. I'm still practicing doing that, but I ask. I have a podcast. I'm recording episode 7 and putting it out into the world this week. I have a coaching practice after many years of talking about it, having kind of a false start a few years ago. I now have a coaching practice and a framework that I built from my own cancer survivorship. And I don't wait anymore until I'm perfectly ready to bring things into the world, whether it's my podcast or my coaching practice or myself, my opinions, my thoughts. Not so much my opinions, because people who know me will tell you, you've never been afraid of sharing your opinion, and this is true. So, but other things, I don't wait anymore until I feel like things are perfect before I launch. And, the good Cuban daughter identity is still in me. It's part of me. And so I still hear sometimes, what will people say? I just talk back now when I hear that question. Sometimes I say, I don't care what people say. It's a matter of principle, or no me da la gana, no me importa lo que piensen los demás. What I think is what matters most. And I still feel the pull of the old rules. I just don't let them run me anymore. I'm both and. I'm my grandmother's granddaughter and my own woman. I'm not one or the other. And I feel like it's really important to stop here, especially for us Latina women. It doesn't have to be either or. We don't have to choose. We take the best, and there's a lot of really good from the women who raised us and who set the example for us, and we add our own desires, thoughts, expressions, experiences to that mix, and we carry that legacy forward. And who you were before the diagnosis, who I was before my diagnosis, is not who we have to be after it. The diagnosis did not define us, but it may have revealed us. It may be revealing us. It's still revealing me 10 years later. The woman underneath the Band-Aid was always there and is still there. And she's worth meeting. She's worth presenting to the world. So maybe the better question is not who were you before, but who have you always been underneath everything that was asked of you? And who are you choosing to be now? You're allowed to take up space, hermana. All of it. That was always yours. If this episode stirred something in you, share it with a woman who has been making herself smaller than she actually is. She knows who she is. And if you're ready to meet the woman underneath the Band-Aid, come find me. Book a free discovery call at paperbell.me/Eileen Lopez Tomei. I'd love to be in the room when she shows up. See you next week. Sana Sana. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Sana Sana, the show that helps you heal and restore the parts of your ecosystem that were depleted after a breast cancer diagnosis. If you liked the episode, please leave us a rating and review so we can reach more incredible survivors, como tú, who want to heal with us. If you want to stay connected with our growing community, check out our Instagram at Eileen Lopez Tomei Coach and share what part of the episode touched your heart today. See you next week.